before you watch this video, you have to go watch the other one, George Ought to Help, because this video is a refortification of the ideas and reply to some of the ideas in the comments. Maybe not directly, but it is kind of implies those ideas and refutes them, more or less. So you need to go watch that video. Anyways, if you're about to watch this video, I'd just recommend getting yourself a drink, cozying up to your couch, putting on some Minecraft or whatever you like to play, maybe even some Dark Souls or something like that, and just enjoy. I get it, I have a young fucking 3-year-old voice, but anyways, I'm gonna start. Today I'm going to apply some more cases for abolition of taxes, which is a wonderful video titled George Ought to Help displays. This will not be a critique of the video, rather a case that further fortifies the standpoint with more of a voluntary economic perspective. Anyways, let's get into the video. It'll be linked in the description, and we will only go over the points which might need a bit more fortification.
This time, a group of your friends take a vote. 6 out of 10 are in favour of threatening George to get him to help Oliver. Does this democratic process make it okay to threaten George?
Okay. The first thing I'll say is that all human worth comes from property rights. You own yourself. You can choose what to do with yourself as long as you're not aggressing on another's property. A violation of these rights is a violation of your human. These infringements are not justified on if it was democratic or if one claims to have a right to violate your property. So one thing I feel like I could add here is a case for why democracy is flawed. Now, let's say that this vote was for something like, should we lower the age of consent to 12? Obviously, a law being passed like this would be one that is involuntary to one of the parties involved. The second party cannot make a point in the situation due to the fact that of their age. It removes discourse from it, and because the other point can't be argued, if the majority mutually agrees to such a thesis, let's say someone were convinced to everyone 60% about this, surely there's to be some discourse, but if the majority agrees to such a principle, it should be allowed. But of course, this principle would be involuntary to the 12-year-old, because a 12-year-old cannot make voluntary decisions, because they are 12, and cannot express to develop decision-making discernment skills. Of course, this is an oversimplified case, which we know would be involuntary and immoral. As a society, we agree to such a thing. But let's just say that a situation like this came about. To prevent such a thing, you would have to take what is an undemocratic or constitutional law and put it into effect. But who gets to make those undemocratic laws? Well, that brings up another point. In a democratic system, to be the one who rises to the top and make these decisions, you must be what is an intelligent bad guy, in the words of Hans Hermann Hoppe. I, of course, am not a monarchist, but I believe achieving something like anarcho-capitalism through a monarch could be viable. Okay, now another point against democracy that is brought up by YouTuber Anglo-Libertarian. It goes over why the monarch has more reason to uphold liberty and prosperity, and why the democrat plunders such a thing.
If you had 4 years in charge of a store until you were subject to a hostile takeover, or had your entire working life and were passing the store on to your eldest child, how would your behaviour whilst you're in charge change between the two? If you could get away with cooking the books, taking inventory, not fostering a good work environment and having a revolving door for staff, basically just being a dick for 4 years, driving the store into ruin, then handing over the rubble to your enemy as a big middle finger, why wouldn't you? You might think you're just such a great person that you'd never do that, but you are first and foremost self-serving. If you're pushed into a corner where you're going to be screwed over, you might as well get the most out of it that you can, while at the same time screwing over in turn the person that's coming in to screw you over. But what about if this store was a family business that you've been passed down from generations ago and after your death will continue to pass down within your family? Over the course of your lifetime, you would benefit far greater by managing it efficiently, profitably, and avoiding conflict by keeping on staff who've worked there for as long as you can remember, rather than trashing it in your first 4 years and leaving nothing for yourself for the rest of your life and nothing to pass down to your heirs.
If you want to learn more about monarchy, I will link the video in the description.
One last change to the situation. This time, imagine that many thousands of people have democratically agreed that a group, who we'll call the agents, should do whatever is necessary to take money from George and give it to Oliver's family.
Again, I'm going to use a point that's been made before, but here we go. Okay, let's say you still support such a thing. Let's say you hold the proposition that taxes can do good things. But have you ever thought into account of what taxes are put to? A large portion of these taxes don't actually go to Oliver or people like him. In fact, a lot of the share goes to violence, media, corporate welfare, law enforcement, satanic religion, spying, and paying overpaid salaries of politicians. Taxes will make pacifists pay for war, vegans pay for animal slaughter, religious folks pay for the satanic temple, eco-conscious people pay for fossil fuel burning, and every person who earns and saves money involuntarily pays for central banks, who devalue the money they save after the taxes are levied. This will people voluntarily, if people voluntarily want to choose to pay for something, they will pay for it. If they don't want it, they will voluntarily not pay for it. What if every year the government gave you a paper, and the paper honestly had every single thing that your tax money goes to, and you could choose which things your money goes to? I guarantee 50 to 60% of that stuff would be morally unjust or subjectively awful, and you would voluntarily choose not to fund it. If the government is so good at their expenses and spending, why are they afraid to give you a choice to where they go? Did you know that 4.5% of the amount of murders committed by government compared to non-government agents were committed by government agents, even though government workers are an extremely small amount of the population? You may say, well, each party has different alternatives, so the vote you find more immoral or vote for the one you find less immoral. There's two-party alternatives. You know what? You may say that something like that, but both these parties are immoral. All state is immoral, and if you say that it should be taken down, you will get 20 years in prison. None of these parties will represent my views because all of them are statists who are power hungry and want to reach the top, and each one advocates for awful things. I know I've rambled on a bit too much, but here's one last hypothetical. Essentially what I'm getting at is this. You are an anti-drug person. If someone has a gun to your head trying to steal your money to spend on drugs and alcohol and video games, that person is then going to give a quarter of those drugs to you. You don't really care for that stuff, and that person is going to keep the alcohol they got and give you a quarter of those video games. Video games are something you like, something you desire. You could have just gone and bought the video games yourself, and you could have got a lot more of them with the amount that person took for you to spend on drugs and for the other thing, alcohol. I don't see how much this is different from the state. Just equate video games to giving to the poor, equate alcohol to wages for politicians, and equate drugs to war or something that is undesirable. And in a real-life situation, you could have just gave your cash to the poor rather than splitting the money up into two things you don't like and one thing you do.
The agents don't explicitly threaten George at first. All they do is send him a bill. Like everyone else, though, George knows what will happen if he doesn't pay the bill. First, he'll get more letters demanding payment, and the bill will get bigger. Eventually, if he still doesn't pay, agents with guns will break into his house and take him away against his will.
Also, a lot of people actually don't believe that the agents will come to your house. They say, well, bailiffs will be sent to your house. What do you think bailiffs do? A bailiff or an enforcement agent may visit your house if you do not pay your debts, such as council tax bills, parking fines, court fines, and county court, high court, or family court judgments. This will happen if you ignore letters saying bailiffs will be used, and the bailiff takes your private property and sells it after a year. And if you still choose to reject taxes, then yes, you will be taken into prison by armed police. Let's say you have a shirt and 2 coins. The government forces you to put one of these coins towards tax. You choose not to pay such a thing, and the government still demands such a thing. And in fact, because you rejected the proposition, the government wants your second coin now. You still choose not to pay the government. So the government sends a man to your house, and the man takes your shirt and sells it for 2 coins. You are now left with 1 coin, so you put it to a safe. to keep the coins safe. But the government knows all the codes to that safe because they know all the codes. They have all the information, and they take your one last single coin. You are left with nothing. Then the government puts you in prison. You eventually make it out of prison, and you are poor. Now, someone else will have to put the 3 coins to the government in order to pay for you. The government, they'll have to pay for you, the government, and the rocks of the next door neighbor who is threatening you. Metaphor for war. That person only has 6 coins and refuses to pay. Does that person have a moral obligation to pay for you and those 2 other things? No, of course not. And he certainly should not have a legal obligation to such a thing. But unfortunately, because of our society, we do.
Most of us feel uncomfortable about threatening peaceful people when we imagine having to make the threats ourselves. If we feel negatively towards the idea of threatening George personally, can we really be comfortable with the threats made against him by agents of the state?
Also, a ton of people say that taxes are a law you must obey. How does it being law justify it? Let's go back to my 12-year-old point. Is that law justified? Let's think about slavery, that a law that makes it a... Does that make a... Slavery was a law that was legal. Does that make it moral? Of course not. Curious that the thing people vote on seems morally sound, but when you actually put it into practice, it seems morally inculpable. Maybe you realize that a lot of these taxes go to funds that you naturally oppose. As a human being, that you don't think something like this is necessary. Anyways, that's going to be all for me, guys. I know it was a little bit broken. I know me talking was a little bit broken. The script was written pretty shit. I'm not going to lie. But if you want to help improve upon my points in the comment, go ahead. I don't really have much people to talk to on the internet right now, so I can't really get people to improve my documents or something like that. But I would appreciate if you guys would contact me, or something like that, through, I don't know, Twitter or Discord or something, I don't know. See you guys in the next one, and yeah.
Super Idol the show.